The Last Crystal Child, Chapter 1. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the darkness, the cold, and the emptiness of the black void of unconsciousness. Then I felt a ray of light on my face. It was so warm. My eyes slowly opened. The light of the outside shocked them. It took a moment for my vision to clear. I found myself staring at a wooden ceiling with golden light pouring through its cracks and holes. I slowly looked around the room I was in. Nothing seemed familiar. I quickly saw that I wasn't alone. There were 4 other people in the room. There was a young man sitting closest to me. He was tall, with shaggy, thick, dark brown hair, a pale complexion on a strong but young-looking face, with 2 icy teal eyes. Another man was leaning on a wood post a few feet away. He looked a few years older than the one next to me, had some scruff going around his chin, and had the same shaggy brown hair, but his eyes were a much deeper blue. Near the back of the room, sitting on a chair, was a much older man. He looked to be in his middle 40s, but I couldn't see him clearly. The last person in the room was a young girl. Her very pale complexion was covered in freckles. Her eyes were a dark brown and her hair was a fiery red that was held up in 2 pigtails. Until this point, I had been dazed, but then it clicked. I didn't know where I was or who these people were. A twinge of fear shot up my spine, and I leaped off the table I was on. I landed a few feet away from the table, but when my feet hit the soft dirt floor, my legs felt weak and gave out. I fell onto my side. When I tried to get up, I realized that my body was numb and my hands were shaking. I was scared, trying to fight the numbness in my limbs, when my eyes shut tight. When I heard someone say, "Hey, are you all right?" I looked up and saw a young man with the teal eyes. He was crouching over me with a worried look, and he asked again, "Are you all right?" All I could say was in return was, "Don't hurt me." My voice surprised me. I didn't know I could talk. "Why would I hurt you?" I didn't answer him. "My name's Clint. What's yours?" I didn't know how to answer. I didn't remember my own name. Then I saw the table I was on. It wasn't a table. It looked like some kind of silver and white futuristic pod with a sequence of symbols on the side. I could read them, so I said, "Lotus." Suddenly, sharp pains went through my body, like I was on a bed of broken glass and nails were pressing into me. I must have flinched, because the teal-eyed man, Clint, then slowly lifted me off the ground and placed me gently on the bed of the white and silver pod. Not a few seconds after he set me down, I passed out. The screams I heard while I slept. They were screams of terror, pain, and panic. Screams from people who were about to meet their ends. The screams were slowly replaced by calm voices who were discussing something or someone. Saying things like, "Is she one of them? She looked like she was in pain. Didn't you see that jump?" I quickly realized that the calm voices were real, and slowly opened my eyes. It was now dark out. The only light came from a small fire on the dirt floor in the middle of the shack. There were only 2 people out of the 4 I had seen earlier. They were Clint and the red-headed girl. They seemed to be arguing about something. I slowly realized that something was me. "Clint, I'm not saying that she is one of them, but she sure does fit the bill," said the red-headed girl. "Really, Tessa? Because it sure seems like that's what you're saying," Clint said in return. What were they saying, I thought. They hadn't noticed I was awake until I tried to sit up. They suddenly turned, and the conversation stopped. Clint quickly rushed over to me and asked, "Lotus, are you all right?" I think So, I replied. The red-headed girl quickly ran over to me, accidentally pushing Clint to the ground in the process, and started to shout at me. "Who are you? Why were you in that thing? Are you from the city? If so, where is it?" The shouting was very worrying to me. I quickly maneuvered around her, put my feet on the floor, and walked away from her. But it wasn't long before my legs started to give out. Clint saw this and ran over to stop me from falling to the ground again. As he caught me, I looked up and saw the lid of the white and silver pod. It was detached from the part I was on, and even though it was covered in dust, I could still see my reflection clearly. I hadn't seen myself before. To my surprise, my complexion was much darker than the others I had seen. But that wasn't the only strange thing about me. I had markings. Were they tattoos? Birthmarks? I couldn't tell. They were a beautiful purple indigo-ish color. They covered my face, hands, arms, and legs. My hair had streaks the same color in it, with the rest of it being so dark that it looked navy blue. My hair was worn in a high ponytail that was pulled through a metal crest of triangles and diamond frames that rested on my head. I was wearing a simple white cap suit, and lastly, a pendant that had a single blue crystal on a simple brown string. "Hey! You didn't answer me!" shouted the red-headed girl. She was annoyed because I had not answered her questions that she had asked only moments earlier. "Tessa, give her a break. She just woke up from hours of being unconscious, and who knows how long she was in that pod thing," said Clint as he loosened his grip on me. "I just got some questions, and she's got answers to them." "You don't know if she does. She definitely has the answer to why was she in that thing." "Okay, you might have got me there, but you don't know if she knows where the City of Crystals is. Look at her, Clint. She looks like what the legends describe as an Amalthean. That doesn't mean anything." By this time, Clint had left my side and was in front of the red-headed girl. I was confused and worried as the argument was growing more intense. "I'm sorry, but what are you talking about?" I interjected. The red-headed girl pushed past Clint, got right up to me, and said, "You know what I'm talking about, Amalthean." A million new questions were now coming to me. What was she talking about? What is an Amalthean? How am I connected to them? These questions were a storm in my mind. "I don't know what you're talking about. I have never heard of an Amalthean. I don't know where the City of Crystals is. I don't know who you are. Heck, I don't even know who I am!" I shouted. The girl's expression suddenly changed from annoyance to surprise. She turned to Clint and said to him, "Is she serious?" And she turned back to me. "Wait, you're bluffing, right? You told us your name earlier. Isn't that right? Lotus?" "I don't know my name. Lotus was just what those letters on that thing read." I pointed to the white and silver pod. The red-haired girl looked at me, stared in a trance for a few seconds, then quickly snapped back to existence and asked, "You can read that?" And she turned back to Clint. "She can read that?" All I could do was answer, "Yes?" "Well, then what does this say?" she asked while pointing to a sequence of symbols on the white and silver pod. "It's a number sequence that reads 10-23-78. The girl turned back to Clint. "She might be useful after all." "She's not a thing that we can discard, Tessa," Clint replied. "I know that," she said to Clint before turning back to me. "I'm Tessa." Chapter 2. The night air was chilly, so we sat by the fire and just talked. Even though Clint and Tessa did have a few more minor quarrels, I did manage to learn a little more about them, their associates, and where I was found. The two other men I'd seen were out scouting for supplies when I woke up for the second time. The one with the deep blue eyes was Clint's older half-brother, Lance, and the older man was named Kai. He had apparently taken in Tessa as a child, and a few years later took in Clint and Lance. I had been found in an old wreck. They didn't know what it had once been. They knew it had been through a battle, as there were bullet holes and scorch marks all over it. Tessa, Clint, and the others were desperate for any kind of supplies, so they raided the wreck and found me by accident. While we were talking, Kai and Lance returned to the shack. My back was turned when they first walked in. When one of them stepped behind me, I swung my elbow up into his side, leapt to my feet, grabbed his arm, twisted it into his back, pinning him down. He started to shout, "Ow! Ow! Let go, Missy!" It was Lance. Then a deeper voice came from behind me. "Well, we got a fighter here." I turned to see Kai. Until now I had only seen him from far off. But now he was close. His hair was gray. He was covered in scars, with one growing across his face. His eyes were a stormy gray. But there was something wrong. Something untrustworthy. Something empty inside of them. Lance, I was still holding him down, started to shout, "Are you trying to break my arm?" I loosened my grip on him. "Where did you learn how to do that?" he asked while rubbing his arm and shoulder. I was still in shock. Words began to fail me. I... Kai chimed in. "Impressive." "I'm so sorry. It must have been some kind of reflex," I stammered. "A reflex?" questioned Lance. "So, you speak?" questioned Kai. Yes." I was still a little shaken. "She not only speaks," Tessa spoke up, "she can read the symbols in the pod." "Okay, now I know you're off your nut, Tessa," said Lance while he took a pipe from his pocket and lit it. "No, really, she decoded a number sequence." "Sure," said Lance while Tessa had a death stare pointed right at him. There was a tense silence for a few moments. Then Clint asked, "So, what'd you find?" "Nothing that useful. Just some fresh water, some kind of scrap tools. The best thing today? A fourth full can of gas," Kai answered. I sat by the fire for a while after that, just listening. The four of them were discussing about what to do and where to go. Later they all went to bed on sheets on the floor. But I couldn't sleep. I slowly walked to the edge of the cliff, next to the shack, and sat down. I looked up at the sky to try to find some stars or maybe the moon. But the night sky was covered in a thick blanket of black and green clouds. I looked out at the valley below. It stretched out before me. It was dead, dry, cracked, and barren. Something about it was very saddening to me. It felt like this valley should still be alive, almost as if it was a child that had died too soon. Then someone cleared their throat behind me, stopping me from nearly shedding tears over the dead valley. I turned quickly to see Kai standing behind me. "Don't attack me. I'll come in peace," he said with his hands raised. "Don't touch me and we won't have a problem," I said to him coldly. I still didn't really trust him. "Well then, I say we have a deal. May I join you?" he asked while gesturing to a spot on the ground next to me. I nodded. "Can't sleep?" "Yes, and I don't think I really need it." "Well, I guess you don't. How long have you been sleeping for?" "I don't really know. I barely remember anything." "Really? Then I guess you don't know where the city is." "What is the city you all talk about? I feel like I missed something." "Okay, so you don't really know. Wow. Are you going to be amazed, or are you going to explain? Snarky, are we? Well, if you really want to know, the City of Crystals was the legend of Amalthea, a great empire that was the center of knowledge and learning. Legends say that the Amalthean people were able to harness an ancient power source and build their nation around it. That's about a rough summary of it. Well, if it was such a perfect place, what happened? No one knows. Some say the ancient power died, and others say that a great flood destroyed the city. Do people really believe in the legend? Well, some are firm believers like Dessa, and others like Lance think it's a children's fairy tale. And where do you stand? Believer or fairy tale? I'm in between. Why? Do you think it's foolish to choose a side like Tessa and Lance? Tessa might be a few berries short of a basket when it comes to the legend. One day she might be crushed by her belief, and Lance might be too realistic. When he's in the dark pits, he won't have anything to believe in. I think that if you're in the middle, you have the best chance of not getting hurt. That could also work the other way around. And end up getting more hurt, couldn't it? I guess you could say that. We sat there for a few more moments in silence. What did they look like? I asked. What? The Amaltheans. Dessa said I looked like one. What did they look like? Well, the descriptions vary depending on the version of the story, but most of them say streaks were in their hair and markings were all over their bodies. And all of them say that they had pendants with a single blue crystal hanging on them. My heart seemed to stop for a moment. They all had pendants? Every single one of them? I hesitantly asked. He nodded. I was now questioning if I was one of them. I don't know who I am. I look like them. And I had a pendant with a single blue crystal hanging around my neck. Well, I'm going to bed. Kai got to his feet and walked back towards the others sleeping on the ground. I just sat there on the edge of the cliff, wondering and gazing at the dead valley below. The Last Crystal Child. Chapter 1. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the darkness, the cold, the emptiness, the black void of an... Oh, just... Okay. Yep, I'm stopping there. Please like and subscribe to help this channel grow and for more awesome content like this. Bye now!